Folks, good morning and welcome to the second in a new series of fireside chats from the Advanced Propulsion Centre. We hope you find the session most useful and informative. I'm Stephen Gasser. I'm one of the business development team here at APC, and I'll be your host for today. We want to take some time to introduce the Advanced Propulsion Centre to you and our competitions. We want to get you thinking about how engaging with APC could benefit you and your organisation. Importantly, we want to introduce you to some of the people who will be able to help you. We want to show that applications can be developed with a degree of support, and then, once successfully funded, we want to show that we're on hand throughout the delivery phases. You can lodge questions via the chat format that you'll see on your screens, and we'll come back to those at the end of today. You can also email the team on info@apcuk.co.uk for further information should you need it after today. We'll also be releasing the slides and the links and all the data that you'll need to help you to navigate your way through. But today we'll be offering an insight into Collaborate, one of the most popular APC funding competitions, and hopefully encouraging you to explore it in more detail and attend the live Q&A on the 19th of January at 2:30 p.m. You can register for this via the Collaborate page on the APC website, and again, we'll send a link out following today's meeting. You'll be pleased to know that you won't have to listen to me talk all morning, as I'm delighted to be working alongside my colleague Matt Silito. Matt and his team is instrumental in supporting APC projects and will be able to provide a unique insight that I hope you'll find really useful. Matt, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself, please, your role, and perhaps talk a little bit about your engagement activities.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So, yeah, I'm Matt Silito. My role is Senior Project Delivery Lead at APC. And I work as part of the delivery team. There's about sort of 8 to 10 of us in the sort of project delivery lead roles. So my background, and similar across the team, is I'm a sort of engineer by training. So did mechanical engineering, worked in automotive for a number of years, worked in consulting for a few years, and then joined APC about 5 years ago. And what we do within the delivery team is we work closely with sort of Steve and the BD team, but whereas the business development team are more towards the front end of the project, looking at sort of building consortia to put together applications and making sure that, you know, the scope is right and supporting you guys through that phase. The delivery team, we do most of our work once the projects have been successfully assessed and once you're in the sort of delivery phase. Having said that, there is a real overlap. If you go ahead to put in applications for the Collaborate program, you'll be assigned a project delivery lead during the application phase. And then we work with you guys when you're preparing for things like your sort of panel interview. So the PDLs essentially work with you from that stage all the way through the project setup. If any of you have done Innovate UK projects before, you'll appreciate the project setup is a bit of an admin task in itself. But then crucially, once you sort of start the program, we work with you from the kickoff through all of your quarterly reviews. We'll generally have at least sort of monthly check-ins with the lead partner to make sure everything's on track. And our goal really is making sure that the funded programs deliver for the project consortia, and also that they deliver our goals as APC, you know, that we're responsible for on behalf of government ultimately. So yeah, worked with a good range of projects over the last few years, and yeah, good to be talking to you guys this morning.
So thank you, Matt. We want to start off by giving you just a few quick facts about Collaborate. This competition is one of the innovation pillars that you'll find within DRIVE35, and in there you'll also find other competitions called Mobilise and Demonstrate. The aim of DRIVE35 Innovation Fund is to support R&D projects that design, develop and manufacture strategically important technologies in the automotive sector. Your project will support the UK's transition to zero-emission vehicles and become part of the pathway to a net zero automotive industry. Collaborate is really exciting and it's very well regarded. It's also built around consortium working. It brings together organisations to deliver collaborative late-stage zero-emission R&D projects, helping promising technologies to take the final steps toward manufacturing readiness and market adoption. The aim is to support collaborative R&D projects that design, develop and enable the manufacture of technologies which target post-project commercialization with a clear articulation on how the innovation will be brought to market or used in an industrial setting. The good thing is that with the advent of DRIVE35, the fund covers all parts of the vehicle, not just powertrain. The competition itself has three themes: zero-emission vehicles, manufacturing competitiveness, software-defined vehicles, and electronic architectures. And you should be looking at these when exploring the potential scope of your project. Because it is a collaborative project, the grant request is a little bit higher than that of Demonstrate. And applicants can request grant funding of between 2.5 and £25 million. Projects can be a minimum of 50% match funded. So for example, if you're asking for a 2.5 million grant, your total eligible project costs need to be a minimum of 5 million. Importantly, key technology is expected to reach TRL 7 or MRL 6 by project close, with a starting point around TRL 4. So if you think you've got something that fits in that area, that fits across those themes, and you've got a group of people ready to start developing that program with you, then perhaps Collaborate is something you should look at. Projects typically have an 18 to 36 month duration, and we've seen them deployed in on-vehicle and off-highway applications. And of course, any UK registered business can be the lead applicant. As the name suggests, the project must be collaborative. To collaborate with a lead partner, you have to be a UK registered business representing organisations of any size, an SME, an OEM, for example. You could well be an academic institution. You could well be a charity or not-for-profit organisation. You could be a public sector organisation, or you could be a research and technology organisation. In all of these instances, if this is something that's new to you and you'd like to know more, you're a little bit unsure about where to start, the key thing is to engage with APC early, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on during today's discussion. So, just to kick things off and very briefly, we've talked a little bit about the scope of the project. We've talked about the sort of themes that you can follow, and we've talked about the kind of company that can apply and who else can be involved. But there's always a great benefit to try and bring Collaborate to life. And this is one of the reasons why Matt's on the call to help us today, because he's got first insight into some of the unique projects that we've funded. So Matt, can you tell us and give us some examples about the kind of Collaborate projects we've looked at and what you've been engaged in, please?
Yeah, sure. So I've just picked out a few examples to try and sort of show the breadth really of the sort of projects that can fit within this banner. So I'm going to switch the slides across to our three themes again, because as you mentioned, Steve, these have been brought out more explicitly as part of DRIVE35 to say, okay, we do support manufacturing and we do support stuff that's focused more on the sort of digital and the electronic side. The reality is in our past projects, we've covered a degree of that as well. But, you know, our main thrust historically was always and remains primarily the zero emission side. But I just want to show that you can do stuff that's, you know, process based or vehicle based or digitalization based. So a few of the highlights from my last few years of being a PDL, I'd say there's Project eShadow. There's a case study available on our website around eShadow. So this was more of a sort of classic vehicle-based project. This was led by Ford, so led by a large OEM, obviously. But rather than looking at sort of powertrain technologies, it was looking at lightweighting. So the aim of the game there was to create a carbon fiber ladder frame with the intention of that being used for e-transits. Obviously, in certain applications, you know, EVs are penalized because they've got a high sort of vehicle mass, which for a delivery vehicle can restrict the amount of payload you can carry. So the purpose of this project, it was working with Gestamp, who are a big tier one, plus a couple of academic organizations. And the aim of the game, was to design as lightweight as possible a ladder frame. And they built 6 prototypes from that, ran them around some proving grounds, and proved that using sort of mixed materials, carbon fiber, aluminium, and steel for some of the existing components, that you can really optimize for weight while still delivering, high structural performance and critically passing all the sort of standard sign-off tests they'd want to do. Another interesting project, more on the process side, was Recovas. Again, there's a case study available online for this. So this was led by EMR, the recycling company, and the aim was to set up, as much as possible, a circular supply chain in the UK for battery recycling. Now, there are lots of things that need to happen to enable a truly sort of circular economy, and lots of different stakeholders that need to come online. But this project was focused around the process side of how do we gather batteries, how do we sort of store them safely and discharge them, and then deliver them to a shredder who can, break down those batteries so that we can recover those sort of constituent materials. So really broad consortium on that one. Also included Autocraft, who specialize in sort of refurbishing and remanufacturing parts. And they got some really useful outputs out of that as well. So very much focused on the supply chain circularity side rather than sort of on vehicle hardware. And then a couple of others. Stop me, Steve, if I'm running out of time. But one I wanted to mention was a project with Magtech. So they're based up near Sheffield. They're actually an SME. They make electric motors. They make sort of controls and drive systems alongside packaging their own battery packs. So really sort of diverse set of expertise. And they were looking at a project around improving primarily the manufacturing process for their novel electric motors. So that was really interesting. It was working with a couple of customers. It was working with the MTC and an academic partner as well. And then, yeah, it was really looking in detail at each of their manufacturing steps, seeing how they can be optimized and seeing how they can deliver a better value product to their customers. So again, you don't have to be Ford or JLR to run one of these projects. That was Magtech, an SME, in the lead position, and they got some really, really powerful benefits from that. Last one I want to mention very quickly, again, just to show the breadth, is Project Clean. This was looked after by a colleague, but that's with a company called Ox, or Ox Delivers. You might have heard of those guys. They've got quite a bit of press over the last few years. But again, they're a startup looking at developing vehicles to be deployed in the developing world in a sort of vehicle as a service sort of model. So they've got an electric delivery vehicle built using, low carbon materials where they can, sort of plywood panels and stuff like that, with the idea being that that can be built in market. And then they've also got this really innovative sort of delivery model. So yeah, super exciting company. Again, an SME doing some pretty sort of impactful stuff on a global scale. So what I haven't mentioned is the long list of more conventional, motor, battery, powertrain projects led by perhaps, tier ones, OEMs. I think they're generally sort of more well understood, but I just wanted to pull out a bit of that sort of color of, the breadth of stuff that we typically get.
Thank you, Matt. And, I think just building on that, the variety and opportunity that Collaborate brings to you also brings about some additional benefits to your business as well, because firstly you can, of course, through the grant funding activity, get support for you and your R&D. And if you get that support for that R&D, that can help you to build that competitive advantage and get ahead of the competition. Getting ahead of that competition then helps you to raise your profile, to build a network. And, we do see organizations entering Collaborate who are not yet automotive suppliers but want to be. So it helps you enter that automotive supply chain for the first time, helping you to get automotive ready. And these kind of projects do build that culture of creativity, innovation, and continued improvement. So have those kind of benefits for your business, but also as well, it then gives you impetus and appetite for other APC projects. And of course, going with that, it's the support from the APC business development team and of course the PDL team just shows that you're not on your own. So it's that support and advice with your bid development and the support and advice with your project and program delivery. So this is sort of collective group of people around you. There's a collective will for you to be successful. We want to successfully fund projects. We want you to pick the right ones at the right time that help your business. And then hopefully engaging with APC early will allow you to do that. And some of you, may have thought about submitting an application for funding for a while now, but perhaps haven't had the opportunity to do so yet, or there might be something niggling away that's stopping you from having a go. So we want to take some time to help you to build the confidence, the belief, and the motivation that this is the right thing to do. And we'll encourage all of you, to talk to APC and to ask those questions. Seek that guidance and advice. We'll reiterate the fact that we're here to help. Because sometimes just finding the time to make a start is tough. And at first glance, the application might appear to be that little bit daunting. But in its broadest possible context, applying for this kind of funding is a bit like applying for a job, because the resources that we provide for you and the information that you need is all there. And you just need to gather the right bits in each of those sections to ensure you can clearly draw out the kind of information that the application is looking for. So Matt, I'm just going to go back to the point that you made earlier on, and one of the common things that we hear is that some people say APC funding is only for companies like JLR, the big OEMs and their suppliers. That's not true, is it?
No, absolutely. Yeah, it can really be suitable for any company that's doing sort of late stage R&D, so close enough to production. As long as it's within scope of our three themes and that it's collaborative in nature. So we've been through some examples already, as you say, of the different sort of players who can typically lead these, and they are always collaborative projects. Now, that doesn't mean you need like a vast sort of cast of characters involved. We've got some CR&D projects where CR&D is what we used to call Collaborate, that have like 3 partners. At the other end of the spectrum, we have some that have sort of like 10 to 11. Now, I might touch on this later, but I think there's definitely a sweet spot there where you don't want to spend too much time doing the sort of project admin, sort of herding cats, right? If you've got a really large consortium. But yeah, it can really be sort of any organization that's developing technology within our 3 themes. I just want to say as well, it can benefit large and small organizations. And there might be some people on the call who think, well, okay, I'm not going to be able to lead one of these myself, but your awareness of this sort of funding ecosystem can be really useful. And if you reach out to, potential customers, be that, tier 1 supply chain partners, OEMs, if you reach out to them with a proposal, that's also a valid way of getting these things off the ground. And being involved in these projects in a sort of collaborative way, it allows you to, work alongside these other organizations for, 2 to 3 years in a lot of cases. And that can provide a really good sort of showcase for what you do next. So you might not be a large organization yourself. You might not want to lead a project yourself, but being aware that there's this funding available, it gives you guys the opportunity to go out to a potential customer and say, we're not asking you to pay for 100% of this development. We know that there's a route here where we can get it 50% match funded. And that can be a really powerful way of getting inroads with potential customers and potential commercial partners.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And Matt's absolutely right. Don't be afraid to ask those questions, because no doubt there are lots of organisations like yours considering these kind of grant applications, and sometimes it's just putting the jigsaw pieces together to find that right team. So Matt's talked about the kind of organisations and a little bit about the projects, but I just want to draw out a little bit more about the scope that we see and the technology that we see. And Matt, are lots of our projects for the same thing?
No, so it is really broad. And we've tried to almost explicitly make it broader with the launch of DRIVE35. So historically, as I've mentioned, we've had things like the MagTech project, which honestly was a manufacturing-based project. We've had other projects that are more sort of digital in nature, but now we've got those 3 themes. I'll put them back on the screen. the message is, I guess, despite the fact that we are the Advanced Propulsion Centre, it doesn't have to be propulsion-based technologies. It doesn't have to be powertrain, from your whatever it might be, battery or hydrogen or alternative fuel through some sort of drivetrain conversions to the wheels. We're not just that bit of it. We cover explicitly, as I've mentioned, sort of light weighting, energy storage, anything that increases efficiency of vehicles. And also, we cover on and off highway as well. So there's actually slightly more scope for off highway because it's sort of, less heavily sort of regulated in a way. So yeah, it can be super broad as long as it forms part of the UK automotive sector and contributes towards net zero. We want to talk to you essentially, and that can be even if your focus is more on the manufacturing side or on the software defined vehicle side. I think there's been a real sort of recognition within government over the last few years that there is a whole set of expertise that is emerging sort of, on the global scene in the automotive space. In the extreme, we end up talking about sort of, automation, self-driving, stuff like that, which is covered mainly by our sister organization, Zenzik. But nevertheless, even for, relatively normal cars, there's a massive need for understanding on the software, digitalization, electrical architecture side. And that's a skill set we want to build in the UK. Even perhaps if the final vehicles aren't going to be manufactured on our shores, there's still a huge amount of value that can be added. And we feel that that's somewhere where the UK has a right to play, right? We've got smart people, we've got great universities, we've got great organizations doing all of this. So yeah, it's definitely not just about how do we turn the wheels. It's about how do we do, the whole thing and progress towards zero emissions.
Thank you. Now, folks, it's important to point out as well that with all projects of this nature, we are firstly looking at a competitive process. So once you submit your applications, we're then looking to assess them against all those others that will have applied at the same time as you. So it's important to point out that the devil is in the detail, and we wanted to take some time to help you consider if you and your organisation are ready to apply. And again, we're going to reiterate the fact we want you to be successful, and we'll do all that we can to support you. But the onus is on you to deliver what your project outlines. And as I said right at the start, it's about picking the right project with the right group at the right time, with the right technology, the right business case, etc., that really tells APC and our assessors as to why this technology should be funded. So as you look to try and build your application, we'll try and give you a few early things to think about. So again, I'm going to throw the floor open to Matt, because you've seen projects delivered at first hand and you've seen the impact that they've made. So what advice would you give to any potential applicants?
So I've got a few notes that I'll go through, and this is more about sort of what you need to think about when you're putting together your application and how you sort of shape that into something that's going to fly in the assessment process. So sort of first and foremost, make sure that the scope of work is achievable. We're asking you to look ahead. As I say, it's typically a 2 to 3 year project, but you want to really make sure first and foremost that everyone in the consortium has the resource and the commitment to follow through on that. Because if not, things start to sort of lose traction very quickly. So make sure you've got really strong commitment. In the application process, one of the most important things is to be able to articulate clearly how you're going to develop the technology and build advantages for UK PLC. So what we're interested in and what the Department of Business and Trade in government are looking for is sort of accelerating progress towards net zero in the form of, CO2 or CO2 equivalent emissions. It's supporting jobs in the UK, and it's supporting investment in the UK. So we've got that economic focus as well as the sustainability focus. But you need to be able to look ahead and say, if we develop this technology, because these are explicitly R&D projects, if we develop this and successfully bring it to market, what are the benefits we're going to bring to the UK? So you need to already be thinking about commercialization. Are you going to need to build a factory? Are you going to need to refit a production line if you're pivoting from some legacy technology to something new? You need to be able to tell that story really clearly. which people are sometimes a little bit nervous about, right? There is inevitably a degree of sort of crystal ball gazing to say, well, in 3 years' time, once we've developed our core technology, what are we going to do next? But you need to get comfortable with talking about those sort of, slightly hypothetical envisioned futures and say, look, guys, if we pull this off, this is the future state we want to bring about. As part of that, just in terms of some of the sort of terminology and sort of analysis you should get comfortable with, total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, TAM and SAM. These are things a lot of you might have come across in the past if you've been writing sort of funding bids. If you haven't, it's all about showing with data who you think your customers are going to be. We're not just going to fund technology because the technology sounds exciting. We're going to fund technology that has a really credible customer base out there. And the more of that work you do in advance, the better. If you've got, a memorandum of understanding with a potential customer that says, yeah, if you guys develop whatever it might be, this inverter with this level of efficiency, we're really interested in it because it meets our needs. Stuff like that really helps build that case. Couple of other things. You will need to do an economic assessment form that's informally called the VFM, value for money sheet. That's basically where you capture all of that stuff. So you will be asked explicitly in a spreadsheet format, how many jobs are you going to create or safeguard if this project is successful? Likewise for investment and likewise for CO2 reduction. Now you get a whole lot of support in that process as well, so don't be intimidated by it. APC will work with you to make sure that you're sort of telling a compelling story and pulling out all those benefits. But again, you need to be able to think in those terms. And finally, again, if people aren't already familiar with it, technology readiness levels and manufacturing readiness levels, Steve mentioned these earlier. That is the language that we speak. It's the language that the assessors speak. It's a standard framework to show how close to commercialization and deployment a technology is. And we've got a window for these competitions. We start somewhere around TRL 4 or 5. The idea is we're late stage for these competitions. So you need to be finishing up or plan to finish up very close to, a marketable commercial product. So you need to be comfortable with talking about your technology in those terms. Last thing I want to mention on this is the sort of financial viability checks. So just so that you guys are sort of pre-warned, if a project's successful in assessment, it still has to jump through some hoops with Innovate UK, one of which is demonstrating that your company is fundamentally on a sort of sound financial footing. So that's showing that, you've either received sufficient investment to develop your technology, or for sort of, larger sort of existing companies, just showing that you've got, a history of solid cash flow that'll allow you to deliver. Some of the pitfalls that we sometimes see, I would say on some projects, lack of alignment with business goals. And that just means that companies lose interest effectively. We see this across the whole spectrum. Sometimes it's SMEs who are trying to do 10 things at once and they need to focus. Sometimes it's large OEMs where, their business is making cars and actually this R&D thing was, maybe a bit of a sort of tangent. But those projects lose traction, people get frustrated and they underdeliver. The best projects that we have are the ones where, all of the partners, especially the lead, say, well, this technology is critical to our business or maybe to supporting a certain site. And, all the way to sort of board level, people are aware this is an important thing for us to do. From a PDL perspective, those projects are great to work with because everyone is so focused. And if there is a problem, people work together to overcome it. In terms of consortium size, I mentioned earlier, personally, I think the sweet spot is maybe somewhere around 5 or 6 consortium members. And I say that not to sort of eliminate anyone with a large consortium, but in sympathy for the project managers at the lead partner. If you've got a 10 partner project, by the way, we have 10, 11, 12 partner projects, but they become challenging from a management perspective. I think sometimes people think like more is more in terms of showing just how collaborative we are. And look, we've got 3 universities and 2 customers in the consortium and, you know, 2 SMEs and whatever. Just think really carefully, are they all truly adding value to the R&D? Because at the same time, as I mentioned, we've got projects with 3 partners, and those ones are certainly more focused in what they're trying to achieve. And then sort of finally, just do understand that admin workload and understand that as a lead partner, your lead project manager is responsible for the whole consortium, is kind of responsible for keeping everyone happy, making sure no one gets left behind. And in those scenarios where you might have SMEs working alongside much larger organizations, you need to make sure that those SMEs still have a voice and that it's still delivering for them. I think that pretty much covers it. I guess, very last thing is just to loop back to that first element of you need a convincing business case. We don't want to fund sort of build it and they will come sort of developments. You need to have a good idea that once this is done, someone's going to want to buy it, and you need to tell that story really effectively.
Thank you, Matt. So, folks, hopefully you'll see that we've taken you on a quick whistle-stop tour through Collaborate, and hopefully it's given you an appetite to know more, and hopefully it's given you the appetite to ask us lots of questions. We're going to close the fireside chat very shortly, and before we do, we'd of course like to thank you for your time and your attention today. Before we do close, we're going to throw the floor open to you now, and we'll be very pleased to take any questions that you've got, or perhaps Alina can relay some that may have already been lodged in the chat.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Matt, for the great presentation about Collaborate. We did have a couple of questions come in earlier, so I'll just read them out loud. You might have touched on this, but I think it'd be good just to maybe say it again for everyone. The first question was, what is the recommended starting MRL level?
I'll pass it on to Matt if that's okay.
Yeah, 1 sec. I might have something open on this. I can say off the top of my head, TRL, sort of like 4 is the sort of minimum start point that we'd look for. Typically somewhere around 5 or 6 in terms of MRL. And then I know TRL sort of maps onto that. I would say, yeah, you need to have a convincing route towards getting something manufactured. Although, you know, within the projects, a lot of the time it is development of the core technology. You're not necessarily looking at the sort of manufacturability within a Collaborate project, but it's the nature of it is it's late stage. So I'll open a document in parallel and give you an answer in terms of numbers, but yeah, you need to have a good idea that this is going to be manufacturable. Otherwise, you're unlikely to pass the assessment in terms of having like a credible route to market.
I was going to say also in the application, it's providing you sufficient evidence to show to your assessors you're at that right level as well, Matt, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So if you've got lab reports, lab tests, if you've done field trials, etc., anything that underpins your case to say that while you're at a specific TRL level, then that evidence should look to be included and referenced.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Auto Council sort of guidance now, and for their mapping, and obviously the 2 scales sort of can move relative to one another. But if you're starting at TRL 4 or 5, that means from an MRL perspective, according to this, it could be as low as sort of 2 or 3. But, you know, fundamentally, you will get asked about that. You will get grilled in interview. And, you know, if you've got a fantastic technology that unfortunately is going to be really, really difficult or expensive to manufacture, that's exactly the sort of thing the assessors would pick up on. But in terms of the way we frame it, it's more around the TRL, I guess, in terms of like filtering in or out at the beginning. I hope that long answer, but I hope that sort of helps put some context around it.
That's great. Thank you. Alina, do we have some more?
Yes. Thank you, Matt. There was another question. Can the APC help us connect with potential partners or other businesses?
I think it's something we could probably have an offline conversation with you about. It very much depends on who you are, what you do, and what you're looking for. There's plenty of opportunity to look across the APC network via LinkedIn, via the successful projects, via the case studies, etc. as well. Also, get to some of the roadshow events and open activities that we run. We don't always tend to try and link those consortia together, but in certain instances, if it's something very specialized, etc., then if we can point you in the right direction, then we certainly try.
Thank you. I've got another question. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I just add to that, Steve. Like, yeah, in my experience, it's like it's good for us to know that companies are out there that are looking to collaborate, and if a need comes up elsewhere, if say we're chatting to someone who says, I want to lead this project, but I have a real need for whatever it might be, some sort of engineering services, or I need a supplier for X kind of widget, it's useful for us to know, but that's not where we spend our time doing that matchmaking. So yeah, as Steve said, make the most of the sort of like networking opportunities through APC and elsewhere. Use your knowledge of this ecosystem to go to the people you want to collaborate with, and go to them with an idea and say, hey, I think our services or our parts might be useful to you.
Yeah.
But yeah, APC doesn't maintain a list of like everyone who wants to collaborate and then do the matchmaking. You've really got to come to us with a fairly firm idea of like, this is our consortium, this is what we want to deliver, and then we can help you sort of hammer that into shape as an attractive application.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Another question. I have a company which is in the early stages development of a software project, and we're currently collaborating with a company overseas. Does this impact on the level of funding or the process we should take?
There are some certain rules around non-UK organisations participating in these kind of activities, and again, if we would be probably best to have a conversation outside of today so we can go through that with you, because it depends very much on what they're doing in their role in the project, etc. But certainly you don't have to discount engaging with an overseas organisation, but it's how we fit them into the project and what they do and their role, their responsibilities, etc. That's a bit we need to explore with you. Now, bearing in mind, the output from these kind of activities is to develop that UK supply chain capability. We acknowledge and we know that not every piece of engineering that you have, not every piece of technology that you have is currently being deployed, defined, used, developed here in the UK. So there is a necessity sometimes to look overseas. But again, let's chat about that outside of today's meeting. Drop us a note and we can just jump on Teams for 15, 20 minutes and we'll chat you through it.
Perfect, thank you. Another question. There is limited space to add evidence in the application appendices. Will we be able to show more evidence in the interview, for example, prototypes?
So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. I've only seen a couple of rounds of interviews, but Matt will probably have a bit more of an insight than I. The amount of information you put together in your packs is designed in such a way so it draws out the most pertinent pieces to support your business case and the application that you want to consider. The interview then is your opportunity to be able to push home the most pertinent parts of that, and to hopefully leave your assessors with no difficulties in perhaps recommending your project to move forward. There is scope, I think, to include some visual aids in those slides, and some organisations perhaps do bring a sample along with them sometimes or two. But it depends very much on what that is and its use and its practicality on that day. Matt, anything from you to add on that one?
Sorry, Steve was just plugging my laptop in. It was
Don't
complaining.
worry, no worries. We were just talking about
no.
bringing additional items to interview. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, you can. I think like visual aids are really good, and it's something that people underutilize in the interviews. I mean, all of the assessors, automotive, engineering background folks. So if you've got sort of printouts of whatever test results, or if you've got physical parts, 100% you can bring them along. But just the way that the question was phrased around, we can't add that much evidence to the sort of appendices. Just think of it's fine to include information at a sort of exec summary type level. The purpose of the assessment isn't to prove, with loads and loads of data necessarily how far you've progressed your technology so far. It's more about, if what work do you want to do to progress it further within the project? Why do you need government funding to do it? That's an important thing. You need to be able to show, if we don't get funding, it's going to happen elsewhere, or it's going to be delayed, or whatever. So it's more about articulating those benefits for if it happens in the UK. And, if you've got some really novel technology and you've done some design work and you've done some testing, I think for each of the appendices, I don't know what the limit is, but, there's certainly enough room to put, some CAD screenshots, some test results, some data. So yeah, don't worry about that too much. If you've got a technology that sounds particularly out there, you'll no doubt get probed on it in the interview. And yeah, that is your chance to bring a bit of extra sort of justification.
And whatever you include in those appendices, please make sure it can be read clearly. A lot of people try and cram quite a bit of information into the space, and as a result, then sometimes the assessors don't always see the detail or the impact, or perhaps sometimes can't even read the text clearly from the information that's provided. So, as Matt said, be selective and be clear, and show the impact of your project in the most appropriate way. Alina, do we have any more?
Thank you so much. I think we've got time for one more, but I
perfect.
also want to remind people that I've put our email address in case we didn't answer your question. If you want more information, please reach out to us, have a look on our website. I've put the email in the chat. But final question, if I'm not successful, can I apply again?
Yeah, absolutely. So part and parcel of the assessment process is to provide that feedback to you, whether your application is successful or not. And many people then use the feedback from the assessors to strengthen their applications and have another go. Now, of course, there is no guarantee that the second time around, of course, your project will still be funded, but it gives you that opportunity to review, and it gives you that opportunity to take the viewpoint from those independent assessors about the kind of detail that they felt that was important to the project, that perhaps wasn't overly clear, might not have been included, or perhaps needed some additional detail built in. You can have 2 goes at applications. So once you've applied for a second time, weren't successful, then you perhaps need to find another project to have a look at. But if you are rejected from your first application, don't be downhearted, because essentially what you're going to get is a chance to pick up on some learning points from there to improve your submission, and then fingers crossed be successful next time round.
I'd just add to that, Steve. I'm conscious there was a slide that I didn't give very much time to earlier at all, just around the other competitions that we've got available as well. And I think depending on sort of where sort of applicants are in their journey, just to be aware that there are multiple other sort of funding offerings under the DRIVE35 banner. So we're talking about Collaborate today. So yeah, relatively sort of big ticket, 2.5 million plus in terms of grant. And yeah, 2 to 3 year programs with a consortium. These are sort of, I always think of these as like the sort of full dress version of our projects, right? It includes everything. But you might, looking at it, you might say, okay, well, we don't have the appetite to do something that's quite as big. Last week we had our sort of chat around Demonstrate. So those are 12-month projects, can be a single partner, much smaller in terms of sort of budget and scope. And, the focus on that is getting some sort of physical demonstrator sort of prototype, very focused 12-month sprint. If we've got any sort of SMEs on the call, our Mobilize project or sort of program, I won't go into masses of detail on this, but that's very well regarded. It used to be called TDAP, and that brings with it an element of funding, but also an element of coaching. So when I was saying earlier, you need to understand your total addressable market. You need to understand who your customers are going to be, what your value proposition is, and you need to be able to confidently talk about that. If that sounds daunting, then Mobilize might be a really good opportunity for you, because that looks at things like, sort of market fit, and it's designed for people who have a technology but need some help sort of turning it into, a commercial sort of proposition. And post that, I won't go into detail on these others, but we also have programs that are focused on scale up of manufacturing. So bringing up that MRL level, and then ultimately the ATF that's existed now for many years. Yeah, that's really big ticket stuff. That's capital investment from government to set up factories. So I just wanted to share this to sort of orient around. Yeah, we're talking about Collaborate today, but if that doesn't hit the sweet spot for you, look at what else we offer as well.
Yeah, Matt's absolutely right. And that just emphasizes the importance of that early engagement with APC. So we can at least point you in the right direction and get you lined up against the most applicable project, competition, to get you started. Okay, folks, so we've run just a couple of minutes over time. Apologies for that. We're gonna close now. But before we do, again, thank you to Matt, thank you to Alina for your help and support today. And we certainly like to thank you as well for the audience for taking part and for listening. What's coming next? Well, as we said, use the opportunity to book a meeting slot or email the BD team for some more help or advice, and we'll get back to you for that. And attend the official applicant briefing that we talked about right at the start. So that's coming up just in a few days' time. You can register for that via the APC website. You'll find a link to a Zoom meeting. There'll be a bit more detail about Collaborate and again an opportunity to take a deeper dive into the session. If you think that Collaborate's right for you and you want to talk about your project, all we need is a few paragraphs and a brief summary that'll allow the BD team to review that with you. And then, if things are successful, if you like the look of things, if you think the opportunity is right, then go ahead and apply. Collaborate's open now and will close in early March. So, use this opportunity to explore and to push forward, and if appropriate, get that application in with us. So, at just short of 10:50, folks, we'll officially close today's session. Thank you very much indeed for your time and attention. We hope it's been a benefit. Keep an eye out for an email with a follow-up on the documents, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks very much indeed. Take care.